In this lesson, let's take a look at some of the common models of guitar that you might want to choose from when you're learning to play. This model of guitar is called an acoustic guitar, sometimes called a steel string acoustic guitar. The strings are made of metal. They're like metal wires. The first two strings are plain metal wire, and the remainder of the strings, the third, fourth, fifth, and sixth string, are called wound strings, which means there's a thin piece of wire in the middle and then an even thinner piece of wire wound tightly around those strings. And if you look at them very closely, you can see how that works. You can see that is the case. Another thing about the acoustic guitar is the width of the neck right up here. There is some variety from one brand or model of acoustic guitar to another on the width of the neck, but they tend to be in a certain range. And how that will affect you in your playing is the width of the neck also determines how close together are the strings, which comes into play when you start fretting notes and making chords. If the strings are very close together, you've got a tighter fit. If the strings are wider apart, you've got more room for your fingers to move. So take a look at, on the acoustic guitars that you might be interested in, the width of the neck and if it feels comfortable for your fingers. The acoustic guitar is thick in this direction. It's basically a wooden box with curved edges, and the box itself is the sound chamber. It's what creates the sound, the air volume in that box. And the sound comes out of the sound hole. Now, this particular acoustic guitar happens to have electronics in it, which makes it possible for me to plug it in. You can see I've got a plug down here, and run it into an amplifier or a PA system. That does not make this an electric guitar. This is an acoustic guitar that has a pickup in it. Next, let's take a look at another common model of acoustic guitar, the nylon string guitar. This model of acoustic guitar is called a nylon string guitar, sometimes also called a classical guitar or a Spanish guitar. One thing you'll notice right away is that I'm playing sitting down because this particular guitar is not equipped to support a strap. It doesn't have the knobs on the end or on the heel of the neck to support a strap, so I'll be sitting down to play with this one. And I'm currently sitting in the position that is generally taken by people working with classical guitar, and that is to place the guitar on my left leg, and my left leg is raised on a little footstool that's about 7 or 8 inches high. And this is a common way to hold the nylon string guitar, although you can hold it any way that's comfortable for you, unless of course you do plan to study classical, then you need to really nail this position down. Another thing to know about the nylon string guitar is that the strings themselves are not made of metal, they're made of nylon, and so they are thicker. They are softer on your fingertips, they are easier to press down for your fingertips, but also they have a softer, mellower sound than the steel string acoustic guitar. Another point of interest on the nylon string acoustic guitar is that the neck right up here is quite a bit wider than your standard steel string acoustic. This has some pluses and minuses depending on what works for you. Because the neck is wider, the strings are further apart from one another, so you have more room for your fingers to fit in there and get the notes. On the other hand, because the neck is wider, sometimes when you're making full chords, you have a lot farther to reach to get that clarity than you would on a standard steel string neck that's a little bit narrower. This is also an acoustic guitar with a thick body and a sound hole, so the sound comes entirely from the air volume of this sound chamber. Finally, let's take a look at the electric guitar. This is called a solid body electric guitar. Unlike the acoustic guitars that we already looked at, this is just about 1 inch or 2 thick and made of solid wood. So it's actually a lot heavier, And it does not produce sound very much on its own because it has no air volume like the acoustic and the classical guitar did. So it relies entirely on electronics for the sound to come across. Without any electronics, if I turn my volume all the way down, you could barely hear it. It's barely a whisper. So it's reliant entirely on being amplified to have sound. Now it is a steel string guitar, so just like the acoustic guitar, the acoustic steel string that we looked at, you've got your first two strings are essentially a piece of steel wire, and the remaining strings are wound strings with steel wire and other wire wound around them. One thing of interest about playing the electric guitar is that even though it is a steel string guitar, the strings tend to be a lot easier to press down with your fingers. That's because of the way the neck is designed. The strings are a lot closer to the fretboard. So for some beginners, the electric is actually easier on the fingertips when you're getting those new calluses going than the acoustic. No matter what model of guitar you decide to play, acoustic steel string, acoustic nylon string, or electric guitar, everything you learn in guitar fundamentals will apply to all three models. Now it's going to sound a little different. The sound quality of these guitars are different. The way they feel to play is a little bit different. But conceptually, the way they're tuned, the way they work, the way the frets work, the way the notes and chords and scales work, it's all the same information. So choose whatever guitar feels best for you, and let's get going with more guitar fundamentals.